So that inspired me to start trying to learn to teach the same trick as many different ways as possible.
Okay.
And that helped me get to a point where I could actually reteach myself on my opposite side. And that's kind of where I started learning how to twist both ways.
What's up, guys? Today's guest is a world-renowned movement athlete and a co-owner of the Motive School of Movement. Please welcome to the Jamcast, Mr. Bob Reese. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, man? It's good to be here.
Man, thank you for making the time to do this. I kind of told you this off screen, but you're one of our most requested guests. We've been getting crazy comments about you. And for those that don't know, we're actually meeting at midnight your time right now.
Yeah, that's like a pretty casual time for me. Typically, classes at the gym start, the most common classes start anywhere between 12 and 4 o'clock. So I really don't have to be up and going until later in the day when most people are getting off school and getting ready to come to the gym. And then I prefer just to train after at nighttime. I've always just been a night person. So I typically train after hours at night. So if I'm not up late tonight, editing some kind of video, this is usually my training hours. Most of my banger clips of me training in the gym are at 3 in the morning. That's just usual for me.
That's crazy. Yeah, when I used to when I first opened my gym, which is funny, when I first opened my gym, I was there till 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and then over the years, I'm okay, I could go at normal times.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it'll change over time, but as of right now and most of my youth, honestly, I've always just been a little more awake at night. I have a ton of friends and people that just are really just morning people. I've just never been a morning person. I have more energy at night.
That's amazing, man. And you've obviously been able to find a career path now where you can make your own hours and set your own schedule and stuff like that. And before we get into your history within the movement arts and stuff like that, I'd love to just talk about the gym that you just came from and stuff, because I know you guys just recently opened within, the last calendar year, under crazy circumstances of COVID and stuff. But for those that don't know, can you just let people know a little bit about your gym? I know it's, like I mentioned in the intro, the Motive School of Movement, based in where are you guys, in Greenville, North Carolina?
Greenville, South Carolina.
Greenville, South Carolina. Okay, dope, dog. Okay, dope. So you're out in Greenville, South Carolina. And how many days a week you guys open, and how big is the facility? Because it's absolutely gorgeous.
So we are, we've been open since, we're supposed to open last March. I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, we're based in Greenville, South Carolina. We're open as of right now, Monday through Saturday. We're only open on Sundays, and if someone signs up for a birthday party, but Sundays are usually the day where all the owners just finally get a day off and need a rest day. But yeah, Monday through Saturday, we typically have classes anytime, starting in the mornings for homeschool classes and private lessons and stuff. And then typically our regular hour classes would be from 4:30 to 7:30. And then every night from 7:30 to 10, we have an open gym where people can just come and train. And if they want to do that on a regular basis, they can sign up for a membership, where it's a lot cheaper for them if they want to come literally every single day to train open gym, so that people can get as good as they possibly want to get. And then on Saturdays, we have morning classes, and then from noon until 10, people can actually come in for open gym that whole time. So yeah, we have a good bit of open gym time, and man, it's been awesome seeing everyone progress and get better, and just building up the community here in South Carolina. It's been a real joy seeing I'll probably get into talking more about my background later in this video, but I started at a gymnastics place coaching parkour as well as gymnastics, and I never actually took gymnastics. I just wanted to go. I'll get into that later. I'll talk all about my background, but essentially I started teaching 9 years ago or something like that.
Okay. And
a lot of my kids that I first started with, they were 5-year-olds, and now they're coming into my gym in this facility, and they're full-grown teenagers now, and it's so crazy to see their progress. Back then they were just a bunch of goobers goofing around, just being little 5-year-old kids, just being there because their parents made them or whatever. And now a lot of them truly really enjoy the sport, and they're just grinding hard and learning super fast, and it's such a pleasure to see.
That's so dope, man. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I read that you actually were a student of Brett Sims at Greenville Gymnastics, and that's where you had met each other. And like over the course of your guys' relationship, obviously he focused a little more on Ninja Warrior, you focused a little more on your movement. But you guys collectively came together with the idea of opening this gym. And I think it took you guys like 3 years of planning, but how long did it actually take to take it from an idea to an actual building?
So yeah, like you said, Brett was like the first person really that I met through parkour. I started by just kind of like watching videos on YouTube and just trying stuff in my yard. And I guess technically the first person I met was my neighbor, who was the one who originally showed me like what parkour was. I like kind of heard about it a little bit, and I watched like the David Bell movie, and that's how I first heard of it. But I didn't know really what parkour was until my neighbor. I moved from Hawaii to here in South Carolina. I'll probably get more into that backstory. I'll talk all about my backstory in a little bit. But essentially, I moved here, and my neighbor knew what parkour was, and I was like, I watched a movie on that once, and it was the David Bell B-13 movie. And I was like, I'm really interested in learning that. He started teaching me that. Eventually got to the point where I was like, man, I'm too scared to learn flips outside. I need a gym. Went to a gym, and the person who was in charge of the program was Brett Sims.
Sick.
And that's how me and Brett met. Over the time, I got like super addicted, started coming like all the time into Greenville gymnastics. And eventually he got to the point in his adulthood, because he's actually 10 years older than me. Yeah. He got to the point where he wanted to get like a different job and start making more money. So he trained me essentially to like take his position. So I took over and started taking over the program there as he left to get a different job. And over that time, as he went to get a different job, he still used all his free time to come and train. And we trained together all the time, became best friends. And over the years, we always had the idea like, man, we should like make a gym. Like, we want to make it happen. We want a place where we don't have to just like be in the corner of a gymnastics gym. We want like the actual equipment that it takes to like make professional athletes and like, you know, let people progress in the way that we wanted to be able to progress. So yeah, we always kind of talked about it. And then, you know, after knowing each other for, I don't know, 6-7 years, he came up to me one day and he was like, Bob, like, it's a possibility. Like, we can actually make it happen. Like, I know a guy who's got like a space coming up that might be available. And like, we can start playing on this and making this a reality. And I was like, man, you know, I'm already in, let's do it. So there's actually 4 owners now. So it started with, I knew Brett, and then Brett's wife got in on it. So her name's Grace. And then there's another guy named Booty Cothran. All 3 of them have been on American Ninja Warrior before. I'm going to be on this year. I got the call back, so I'm actually going to be on this year. But yeah, so they kind of all knew each other from like Ninja Warrior stuff, and then I just knew Brett through parkour stuff. And then yeah, so we started getting together and we wrote up like a legit like business plan so that we could try to get a loan to be able to afford having a facility the size that we wanted. And yeah, after 3 years of planning and talking to people about getting loans and talking to people about like exactly what location we wanted, we started with the idea of like, hey, we have this location kind of picked out, and that fell through. Looked through like 3 other locations, and eventually it all kind of just like came together and worked out. But man, it was a long process, and I learned so many things. Like I went to college for 2 years, and I got my degree. I got a business degree because my parents wanted me to. But man, I learned so much more making this business than I have literally anywhere in my entire life. Like, I knew nothing about building. Now, Brett and honestly the other 2 owners, all 3 of them, they knew tons about like building and how to like make things, just like how to build things. Essentially, I knew nothing about building. I had absolutely no experience with building before, and all of them like kind of just like helped me because we didn't have the financials just to pay like tons of people to build our gym for us. Like, we had to grind that out and like do that work, and I didn't know what I was doing. So like along the way, I just watched them and learned, and like there are so many things that I learned like along the way. It's been an incredible experience, and I'm still learning every day.
That's crazy, man. And like, I don't want to misspeak right now, but I feel like I saw videos of you guys when you were in the process of building the gym, and it looks like you guys were actually building the gym from scratch. Like, did you guys actually erect a building from the foundation all the way up to what it is now?
Yeah, so that's one of the really cool things about our situation. Can you hear my dog barking?
Yeah, it's all good. My dog's right next to me, and I'm like, please don't bark. I'm like hoping he doesn't hear your dog.
Sorry about that.
No,
he'll pass out. We got a new puppy, and he's He's being crate trained. He is freaking out right now.
It's
Hopefully
low
he'll
key.
take a nap soon.
I could barely hear it. I was just nervous my dog was gonna hear it and start going off. But yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Oh man, he's super cute. I'll talk forever about my pets. Sorry. One more time. What was the question?
Yeah, so like I think one thing that's unique about your gym is I own a gym myself, tons of my friends do, but I think what was cool was you guys actually built your building from the foundation up. So you didn't have to like move into a pre-existing space. You got to actually erect a space that you wanted to.
Yeah, so that's been super cool and super exciting. So we got there was four owners, and one of them, that one I talked about earlier, Booty Cawthorn, his father owns like a bunch of properties here in Greenville, and one of the properties that he owns is the one that he was building at the time, and that we ended up actually getting to be a part of, which him being a part of this is the reason that we're still open during COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk more praise and thanks about that in a little bit. But yeah, it's been super cool along the way, because we designed it how we wanted it to be, and I knew that we wanted in-ground trampolines, and we wanted an in-ground like resi pit space. And that's something that we didn't have at Greenville Gymnastics. We had above ground trampoline, and everyone was always scared to learn things on trampoline because they were scared of falling off, and it just like wasn't that safe. And then having an in-ground resi I knew be like super helpful as well for like all the skills that I wanted to teach people essentially. So it was super helpful to have the ability to be able to be like, hey, like here's the building space as it's being built. Let's put holes here, and let's put this here and this here, and it made it a lot easier to be able to design the space instead of having to have a space and work around like how we want it to be built. Instead, we got to kind of create the space that we got to exist in, which was a really cool opportunity that I know most people don't get to experience. So that's super cool.
100. And I think one of the coolest things about your gym, with besides it being built from the ground up, is that, there's a lot of parkour gyms out there. There's a lot of like Ninja Warrior gyms out there, but a lot of them are very like type specific. And I think your gym is probably the first one in the world that really is a combination of both elements, like to a very, very high level, if that makes sense. Instead of like having a parkour gym that has just like a salmon ladder here, you guys seem like you have so many ninja obstacles on top of having some legitimate parkour stuff. So it seems like one of the coolest gyms in the world. I definitely got to make it out there.
Yeah, for sure. We're definitely not just like a parkour gym. That's just like my passion and part of it. And even like that is part of the reason that we have so many different kind of styles and things and equipment for learning different types of movement is my style in parkour. Like, I don't really just strictly do parkour. Like, I do trampoline, I do tricking, I do parkour. Like, I try to mix in as much as I can. Shoot, if someone told me they could give me a cheap ballet lesson, I would take a ballet lesson right now. Like, I just love movement in general. So, like, that's kind of how I wanted to base the gym around, because I wanted to have a parkour section. I wanted to have a section where you can learn really cool stuff on trampoline. I wanted to have a spring floor dedicated for tricking. And then, Brett was more focused on the Ninja Warrior side. He's thought through the Ninja Warrior design so in depth. Like, he's gone all around the world traveling to different ninja gyms, and I've gone all around the world traveling and seeing different parkour gyms. And both of us combined, like, we really knew what we wanted, and we knew what is really helpful to have in order to help people to progress to where, to get past the point where we are now. If we want to raise students to get even farther than we are now, we knew what we needed to have in our gym for that. And that was super like helpful to have that knowledge of like what we need, what exact equipment we need in order to like essentially build the best athletes that can possibly exist, and also build a space where you can have a ton of fun.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And now you just kind of alluded to it right now, how like your style is one that you can't really like put into a box as far as categorically and stuff like that. So can you just kind of give us an insight into how your journey into movement started? Was it those like first, gymnastics school where you met Brett at, where you didn't take gymnastics, or what was your introduction into movement, I guess?
So my introduction to movement was essentially I went to like a family gathering, which most of my like aunts and uncles and everyone, they all live up in Delaware, so that's like where my family is like mostly from, which is funny because like you don't really know anyone from Delaware.
I don't know anyone from Delaware. I don't know a single person.
Now you do. So I technically never really lived in Delaware because my dad was in the Air Force, so we traveled around a bunch, and I never really lived in Delaware. But for the first year of my life, I was born in Delaware, and then my dad got traveled around a bunch for Air Force stuff. So I was up in Delaware visiting family, and my uncle's like super into just like learning a ton about everything, and he was watching the David Bell movie and like learning about parkour, and he like showed it to me because he was like, man, it's super interesting, you should watch this movie with me. And that was like my first like look at parkour, was watching the David Bell B-13 movie. And then shortly after that, my dad, he retired, so he got a choice to get moved one last time for the Air Force that the Air Force would pay to move us for. And my oldest sister was graduating high school and going into college at the time. So at that time, my dad just wanted to stay together as a family as long as possible. So what he did is when he retired, he chose to move to South Carolina so that we could all just live around where my sister wanted to go to college. So we all moved here, and when I moved here, that's when I met my neighbor who did parkour, and I watched that movie, and I was like, yo, I want to learn parkour. And of course, the first thing I wanted to learn was a backflip. That's like all I cared about, was just learning a backflip. That's like what intrigued me most. So one day, my neighbor was throwing away his mattress, and I was like, oh, perfect. We drag that into the yard. There's no way I can get hurt. Like, I can learn a backflip. There's no way I can get injured with a single mattress on top of grass, which is not true. Thankfully, I didn't get hurt. I got lucky, but like, I just pulled that mattress into my yard, and me and my friend, who he knew a little bit about parkour, he kind of just like did a few of them, showed me the basics. I like watched a few on YouTube in slow motion, and then I just like hucked a bunch of them, like the most unsafe way you can learn backflip possible. And I got addicted super quick. Like, I was immediately addicted. I just wanted to keep doing backflips. I wanted to learn front flips. I wanted to look up what other kind of flips existed. I got addicted super quick. And after just like doing a bunch of flips on that mattress, and then he also started teaching me like the basic like vaults that there are, Kong vaults, safety vaults, all the just basic vaults that exist. Once I got through all that stuff, I was like just craving to learn more. So I did some research, and I was like looking up any type of place that would teach that nearby. And I found out there was a place called Greenville Gymnastics that had like an open gym time that older people could come and just kind of like use the open gym to like learn stuff like parkour. And then there was Brett, who was there, who was kind of technically it was like an open gym, but Brett used a lot of his time to like, during that open gym, instead of just supervising, he used a lot of his time to like, he would keep an eye on everyone, but he would also like, anyone who seemed like they were bored or didn't know what to work on, he would just go give them challenges. And like, he was a really big inspiration to me when I started. Like, he did an amazing job at pushing me to do things that I was scared of. Like, I would purposely only work on like vaults or flips that I like wasn't scared about, and he would push me. He's like, "Hey man, you suck at bars. Let's go do some bars." So we would go work on bars, and he would make me get better at that. And then he was like, "Well, let's work on this. You're not good at this." I'm like, "You're scared of doing this," and he would push me to get out of my comfort zone. He was really good at doing that with everyone who came into the gym, which really built up the community and made a strong community here in Greenville. And I definitely dedicate like that first part of parkour where I came into training in Greenville, getting to know everyone who does parkour here in Greenville. I think that's mostly because Brett was so good at just like pushing people to where he knew their limits were, and just inspiring people to do stuff and have fun and just be a good community, which was super cool and inspiring. And then slowly, you know, that role kind of got transferred over to me as he got older. And then I just, you know, using his inspiration of like how he taught people, I kind of slowly fed off that and tried to build off it even more. I started doing tons of research on how to coach better, because after a year of going to Greenville Gymnastics and training there with Brett started to want to get his other job and start making more money, and I wanted to get into the gym for free, essentially. Like, I didn't care about coaching that
free
much.
training.
I just wanted to start training for free because I was getting older. My mom was gonna like, you know, I gotta get a job to pay for this kind of stuff. You know, she was like paying for my first like open gym lessons, and then she was like, all right, well, you need to get like a license and a car and pay for gas and pay for these gym lessons. And I was like, well, if I get a job there, at least I don't have to pay for that. So that's like the initial reason why I started coaching. And then Man, it had to have been over a year before I knew what I was doing with coaching. Like, I coached and I shadowed under other people, and it was so hard for me because I started coaching when I was 15 and a half, which, is a kind of typical age to start teaching. But for me, someone without any type of gymnastics background, I never like babysat, I'd never been in charge of a kid before. And at 15 and a half, I did not know what I was doing. Like, I tried my best, and the kids like loved me, but man, I let the kids walk all over me, and I didn't know how to discipline a kid. So it was extremely difficult to coach for the first year. And after that first year, I mean, I knew all the basic progressions of what to teach because of like what I learned, but I didn't know how to discipline a kid, and I didn't know like just how to run a class essentially. So my first year was probably the hardest year of coaching, just like learning how to run a class and how to effectively make everyone like listen to you and inspire them without letting them walk all over you. And that's something that if you do parkour and you haven't started coaching yet, like, you'll learn real quick if you don't know how to discipline kids. Like, they will walk all over you, dude. And honestly, that's probably gonna help me be a way better parent whenever I do decide to have kids eventually. So I'm really like happy that I went through that trial period where it took me a while to learn how to discipline kids. But yeah, after like a year or so, I started to learn how to discipline kids better, and I started getting super interested in just like learning more things about gymnastics because I realized I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, when I first started parkour, like I had a good bit of strength. I was pretty strong, and I had confidence. I wouldn't be that scared to just throw stuff. But I would get injured every now and then because I would just throw stuff. I didn't learn through proper progressions, and I didn't do any side drills. I would just watch a trick in slow motion and then just go for it. Which is I feel like how most people started in my era.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't have progressions. We didn't have tutorial videos. Like, we had tutorial videos for maybe a few flips, but none of the advanced flips because they didn't exist yet.
Yep.
So I got super interested in just learning how to break down things better and really watch the body positionings, and gymnastics helped a lot with that. I would literally stay after for several hours after coaching, and after I'd go to school all day, I'd coach for several hours, and then I'd purposely stay after and just watch all the other gymnastics coaches teach the gymnastics students. And at Greenville Gymnastics, they specifically were really, really good at breaking down body positions and really studying what body positions you have to hit during certain tricks and why you have to hit those positions. And so I learned a lot from that. And then I realized the more I started to study it, that gymnastics isn't always efficient. Sometimes it's about just being pretty. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's just about keeping your toes pointed, keeping your legs straight. And then sometimes keeping your toes pointed and your legs straight is actually efficient movement, and it actually helps you propel further into your tricks. So I started kind of comparing what actually is efficient and what isn't. And I started breaking down how to learn things to a point that I never had to learn in order to learn it myself. And that helped me become a better coach, because I learned by just watching and then doing it first. And then as I started to get more advanced, I learned by safely breaking down progressions and trying those progressions and getting my way up to the tricks. And then I took a few seminars. I got certified in teaching parkour through Apex.
Yeah.
And as I got certified through them, they told me there's several different ways that people learn. Not everyone learns just through hearing you be all right, straighten your legs. Some people have to see you straighten your legs. They have to see it first. Some people, you have to spot them. You have to physically make their legs straight so they can feel it. Everyone learns differently. So that inspired me to start trying to learn to teach the same trick as many different ways as possible.
Okay.
And that helped me get to a point where I could actually reteach myself on my opposite side. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I started learning how to twist both ways, as I wanted to see if my progressions would work, and I didn't know who to teach them on every now and then, because I'd just be there after hours 3 a.m. training. I was like, well, I'll just try on my opposite side with this new progression and see if it works. And I would try to learn things with different progressions that I just made up on the spot, and some of them worked great, some of them didn't work, and just through trial and error, I got to the point where I really felt like I understood the movement and how to teach it and how to discipline a kid and how to make people truly listen to me when I'm trying to convey these thoughts to them. And I got really good at figuring out each way an individual kid learns. So if I had a kid in class and I showed him this one way of learning something, he wouldn't pick up on it quick. And I would look at social cues and things of what he's paying attention to. I was like, oh, well, like this kid's doing this. Obviously, he's going to learn better if I actually put him in that body position. He obviously like learns to feel better. And I just got to learn to understand people like a lot better through that whole experience. I mean, it took a while, but yeah, I mean, I've been coaching for like over 10 years now or something like that. And I really feel like I've gotten to a point where I can break it down that I'm like really happy about just like coaching in general. I can get kids to progress a lot faster than I used to be able to, and in the safest way possible. So it's been a journey, man. I know I kind of rambled on for a while about that, but I get excited about it.
No, bro, I think this is exactly what people want to hear, you know, like all we get to see is like the end product of your videos where we see, you know, all the masterful skills that you're able to achieve on your own personal body. But like, you know, to hear this is just crazy. I was going to ask you how you were able to start unlocking things on both sides, and you just literally, you know, gave the answer right there. But just for like a frame.
There was actually a couple reasons why I started learning things on both sides. And that was just like one of the reasons. So one of the reasons is I wanted to learn to teach those progressions that I was coming up with. And then there was a few other reasons, and all those reasons kind of blended together to the point where I was just like, well, I'm just going to learn to do a bunch of things on both sides. One of the reasons was I started to get really bad patellar tendonitis, and my knees started to hurt a ton. And I really like was working on corks and double corks, and I was like, man, my leg cannot take this today. I'll try my other leg.
Typical.
That's probably like 30% of the reason why I learned to twist on the other side, just because I was like, man, I can't use this leg today, but I really want to learn corks, so here we go.
That is crazy, man. And now you kind of spoke about it, how like, you know, you were coaching, started coaching around like 15 and a half. Just for frame of reference, like how old were you when you first saw District B13, the movie? And then how many days and hours per week do you think you were training until you got to like the level where you're at, you know, where you felt comfortable?
So from that first point where I just started training, like I learned the backflip and I started training, I got invested super quick. And that's something that my entire family's kind of been known for. We get super addicted to things super quick, which is one of the reasons that I will never do like drugs or alcohol, because we get addicted so quick to things. And I've been addicted to parkour for over 10 years now, and I'm not going to stop. You know, so like I know my personal background. I know what I should and shouldn't get into, but that's kind of a side topic. I got super addicted to parkour super quick. Okay. So when I first started training parkour, I literally trained it every single day, like several hours a day. Like I had just moved to South Carolina. I was going to a new school. So at the time, I really didn't have that many friends. I didn't have anyone to like hang out with after school. Like it was a new environment for me. I had that one friend across the street who knew what parkour was. So he like showed me the basics. And then I literally just like YouTube search, just like looking up every single trick possible. And every day after school, get my homework done. As soon as it was done, parkour for the rest of the day. Like only training, like several hours a day. And that was fine up until I was about like 19, 20, and then it started to hit me on my knees, because I wouldn't work out. I didn't do any like conditioning, no like rehab, nothing. Like literally just like 4 to 6 hours of parkour like every day, like so much training. And it caught up to me in my knees when I was like 19, 20, and then it took me until I was about like 22 to figure out how to actually condition and prevent my knees from like falling apart. And that's a whole nother side story that we can get into if you want.
Yeah, that is crazy, man. I'm always interested to hear about people, you know, that have pushed their bodies to such an extreme limit like yourself. And obviously with how young our sport is, we don't really have too many guys in the parkour and free running community that we got to watch like generationally to see what's going to happen to their bodies. So yeah, how has your body held up over the years after being in the sport for over a decade?
So when I first started when I was 15, I was like pretty strong body weight ratio wise, but I wasn't actually that built. Like I was kind of a twig. So when I first started, I had a few issues with, well, first of all, I have osgood slaughter. So let me show you my kneecap. You probably already know what it is, but
I have it as well. Oh, yeah, yours is big.
Like I have 2 kneecaps essentially.
Yeah.
And osgood slaughter is just like a thing you get as you're like developing and getting older. So I had to deal with that. And that wasn't something I really had to like do a bunch of conditioning to fix or anything. It's just like if you have that, it just kind of sucks growing up, and you just have to deal with it. But as I started to get older, well, actually before I started to get older, when I was younger, I was saying I was skinnier. I had some wrist problems doing big dive kongs and like hurdling off my hands and stuff. My wrist couldn't take it because I was just skinny. And as I started to get older and Brett started to push me to do more tricks on bars and things, and I just started to like eat more because I was growing more, I guess. I just started to get like thicker and more built on my upper body. So my wrist problems started to hurt at first when I first started training because I just like wasn't that built. And then as I started to do it more and like eat more and grow more, like everything just kind of got like thicker and stronger, and then my wrist problems went away. And I haven't had any wrist problems since I got turned like I don't know 17 or something like that. So that went away, and I haven't had to deal with anything like that. But then when I got about like I was saying like 19, 20, I started getting some serious like patellar tendonitis, knee pain. And at first I just thought it was like my oscars started getting worse, and then I started to realize now it's like a different pain. I need to learn to deal with this. Went to a few doctors who didn't really know what they were talking about. I literally went to the doctors and they were like, "Oh yeah, you have like patellar tendonitis." And I was like, "Sick. What do I do?" And they like literally went on Google, typed up patellar tendonitis, like looked at the first exercise and like printed it off and handed it to me. They were like, "All right, do this." And I was like, "No, why am I paying you? Like, this is awful." So I immediately was like, "All right, well, I got to do the research for myself because apparently like I can't even trust every doctor that is there." So I started looking for more answers. I started just kind of doing trial and error of like what worked and what didn't work. And I tried a bunch of different conditioning things, and I finally came up with some stuff that worked. And as I started to travel and compete more, and I was still doing parkour while I was trying to figure all this out, I started meeting more people along the way who had similar problems and new people, and I started like building up. I started like adding into my conditioning what other people were doing as well, and seeing what worked and didn't work. And I even met like a few like physical therapists along the way who like really studied it and gave me some great advice as well. And over time, I came up with a bunch of different exercises and stretches that would stretch out the right parts of my body to kind of relieve that knee stress of my tendons pulling on each other, as well as doing exercises to prevent it from getting worse, and then actually eventually getting better the more I did those exercises. Which I'm thinking about making a YouTube video on, just like explaining all that and getting more in depth in that, because it's some really helpful information that I think the new up and coming parkour community should really know, because most of the kids who are doing parkour right now, especially if they're like anywhere between 12 and like 17, probably don't realize it, but in a few years their knees are going to start hurting if they don't do this sort of conditioning, especially since parkour is getting to the point where kids are doing way higher impact tricks than I was when I first started. When I first started parkour, a backflip was like super hard. Like anyone who could full was a god.
And,
like,
you could shut down a session with a cork.
Now in order to be like, to have a reputation, you have to get like a triple full. So like, it's crazy how much more impact you kind of have to take and how much more technique you have to have in order to like be known in parkour right now. So I think there's definitely going to be more rehab and prehab and conditioning and stretching that needs to be done, especially of that up and coming youth, if they want to continue to be as if they want to continue to push the sport.
Yeah, 100, man. And now, from someone that, detailed like how often you were in the gym studying people and coaching, and then obviously as a gym owner yourself, what percentage of time did you spend training inside comparative to outside? Because obviously we see samplers of you and, we know that you can do a lot of these high level skills outside, but what percentage of your time was spent indoors? And do you still enjoy training indoors more comparatively to outdoors, or is it like a combination of both?
Let's see, when I first started, when I was learning the basics, I learned them all outdoors for like the first like half year or something like that, because I just didn't even know the gym existed. And then once I found out about the gym, I was paying to go there once a week, and then every other day I just like trained outside, and I would either try to take the skills that I learned in the gym, like slowly throughout the week, I would try to take them outside, or I would just work on like getting bigger jumps, bigger vaults, bigger swings, just like on nearby like playgrounds and things like that. And most of my training for the first few years was probably outside. I only trained in the gym like once a week. And then after about 2 years of doing parkour, when I started working at Unit Gymnastics a bunch more, I would just stay after hours and train in the gym more. So Um, at that point, when I started working at the gym, that's when I started training in the gym more, maybe even like equal to the amount of time that I spent outside training.
Okay.
So it was about equal for a few years there, and then as I started to get closer to like graduating high school, getting into college, I had to get more hours at the gym in order to be able to just pay for things. So then I was there for more days, and then it slowly converted to, well, I had to train in the gym more than outside because I was just there all the time working. So like, and I didn't mind it. I loved working there. I loved training there. But the time did get converted from me training outside to training more inside, just because I was there and I had to work more. And yeah, I mean, now that I own my own gym, it's like even more so that way, where I have to be there all the time. I own the place. I work there all the time. Like, I'm just there all the time training, and it's not a bad thing. It's just different than how I started. You know, I'm inside more than I am outside, but I still make it a point to at least once a week try to get some outdoor training in. And yeah, I mean, I have tons of fun with it, whether it's indoor or outdoor. I will say that it's much easier to get better at flips and things where you have to be upside down in a gym. Whereas if you're just learning literally just jumps and vaults, those you can pretty much like learn outside pretty efficiently without like getting hurt, as long as you know the right progressions and you have like the right teacher above you. But in order to like learn sketch flips, you pretty much just have to have pads, like
Yeah.
if you want to learn it efficiently. I mean, there's always progressions to learn things outside, but they're just way slower. You're going to progress way faster if you have mats in a gym, and it's just like way safer and more. Everyone learns differently, and there's more progressions in a gym than there are out of the gym.
Yeah, totally agree with that, man. And now along the lines of like you training in a gym for, you know, an extended period of time once you were back there coaching and stuff like that, two of my favorite videos on your channel are Moving Blocks Part 1 and Part 2 in 2014 and 2017. For anyone that hasn't seen it, we'll probably put a little clip on the screen right now, but definitely head over to Bob's channel, check it out. For those that haven't seen it, it's cool because you guys are doing in-gym training, but in unique circumstances because the blocks aren't just static. You guys are constantly moving them and doing cool combinations and stuff like that. Is there a video in your mind that stands out as your own personal favorite that you've created over the years? You know, you're someone that's put out so much content across Instagram and YouTube and across so many different platforms and channels, which we'll talk about. But I just want to know if there's one that is like the most meaningful to you or stands out the most.
There's like different categories of it. So
Let's name them, dog. Let's name them.
first video, I don't even know if this is on my current channel, if this is on my first channel. I have like a first channel that I made for YouTube that only has like real old clips of me that are like kind of cringe, like backflips where like I can't even tuck properly, like my knees are sticking out, and like real bad parkour.
Yes.
I'll tell you what it is. I'll plug it. So if you want to look up real cringe parkour videos of me, look up Robert Reese 1.
Oh, there we go.
That'll come up, and it's, oh gosh, dude, there's some cringy stuff on there. Yeah, real bad technique. Don't look at technique for that video at all. Just look at it and laugh, and just know that you can be better than me, because that's where I was at 15. So if you're younger than me, you're younger than 15 and you're starting, you can easily be better than what I was. My current channel, Bob Reese channel, I don't know if this one's on the first channel or not, but the first video that comes to mind, that was like my first video that actually got over 1,000 views, which made me like super excited to like just get more into like making more parkour films, was we made a group parkour video, and I'm not even sure what it's called, like probably just like Greenville Parkour or something like that. I'll look it up someday. But I'll look it up and like send it to you after or something. But it was a video of like the Greenville community when I like first met them. So like
sick.
all the people when I first went downtown for like the first time and just like met everyone and started training with everyone, I was like, man, I want to make a video with all you guys. And it's literally just like all those old school type parkour videos where like there's like 4 of us in a row like jumping the cat grab, and there's like 4 of us in a row like doing flips, and it's like some of the stuff on there was actually pretty crazy. There were some crazy people in the community that I like really looked up to. Like there was a guy named Rico and a guy named Chad, and both of them like front flipped off this thing that was like had to be like 12 feet off the ground. It was like real high, and it was over a wall down to like some grass and like over a spiky bush too. So it was already sketched because of that. And like I was scared to hang in cat grab from it and like drop down to the ground. And this guy Chad, man, he just dove front flipped over it and just like landed perfectly and executed great. And it blew my mind. And then this guy Rico was like, "Man, I'm not gonna let him show me up. I gotta be the best." And he freaking tunnel flipped it.
No
he just
way.
like hurtled over a wall and tunnel flipped like 12 feet down over a wall. And like, man, it was like so crazy and inspiring. And like, I made a video out of all of us just like training together and putting that all together. And that was like my first video that blew up. And I think a good bit of the reason that it blew up and was my first video that got 1,000 views was so many people were in it. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting a lot of their followers nowadays as well on social media, is through collaborations. Yeah. And I haven't been as hardcore on collaborations, and I could probably have way more followers if I focused on it more. But that was my first video that blew up, and I think that's why so many people work on collaborations nowadays. Is like, that's how you get a bunch of views. If you put a bunch of people in a video and they all share it, it's going to get more views. So that was my first video that, like, in my mind, blew up. It was only 1,000 views, so like, compared to like some of my videos now, that's not that big. But for me, that was really big at the time. You know, that was my first video that hit 1,000. And then after that, my next video that blew up, I'm not sure which came first, but it was either Moving Blocks 1 or my first Red Bull Art of Motion submission. But both of those were around the same time, I think.
They're both in 2014, yeah.
When people say like, "Oh, I've been following Bob, I've been following you forever, like I've known you since this video," they always either say Moving Blocks or my Art of Motion submission. Those are like my two like most common things that like people like found me for. So those ones, like Moving Blocks 1, 2, and 3, and then all of my Art of Motion submissions, those are all like my heart and soul of like what I really put a lot of work into. And the Art of Motion submissions, obviously, like I put a lot of work into them because I spent like, you know, the whole year leading up to that point just trying to get those tricks and take them outside. But the Moving Blocks videos were a whole nother challenge in a whole nother way. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried anything with Moving Blocks.
Yeah, I have. It's crazy, the amount of coordination. Even the guys just pushing the blocks is just like a skill in itself, you know? Like,
yeah. And it's terrifying because like even the most basic trick, it becomes terrifying because you have to trust someone else to do their job, or you might just land on your head. Like, exactly. You literally, like, the scariest ones are big vaults. Like, if you're just doing a massive double Kong or a big dive Kong, you're literally just diving in the air in the body position that you need to be in, just waiting for your landing to suddenly appear below you, which is such a crazy, scary thing. And it was really fun making all those films because of that. But man, it took so long to make every single one of those. Every single one of Moving Blocks 1, 2, and 3, they all took a minimum of 6 months to film.
I was just gonna ask. Okay.
Because we had to have a minimum of 5 people for every shot, and to get 5 people to use their open gym time in order to help out with this film and like do this thing was like pretty hard to do. And on top of that, they were really like, we tried to make them pretty complicated. So like, not only was it like you had to use everyone, like, you know, between 5 and 10 and 20 people, you got to use all those people to kind of coordinate a shot together during their open gym time that they're paying there to be there for. On top of that, the person has to land the trick. So like it can take like an hour, 2 hours, who knows how long to land the whole thing and coordinate it as well. Like each shot in that video had to be like a minimum of an hour to like get that, to get each shot. And, you know, open gym at that time was only like 2 hours long or something like that. So a lot of the shots we did stay at late after hours. You know, a lot of us were working there and like, you know, we're just like, we'll just like stay late, not charge anyone to stay extra because like we're using the time that they paid to be here for. So yeah, I mean, it was just like a lot of work in general. Like it took at least 6 months to film each one of those, but I'm really happy we did it. Like it was a journey. It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but yeah, I mean, people still like say that was like their first most memorable video of like how they found out who I was. So I mean, I'm really glad I did it. It was really fun and it helped me bond with the community more.
Yeah, man. It's one of my favorite video series by far. And like I said, I'll put it on the screen. People go to your channel and check it out. But I'm also really glad that you brought up Art of Motion, man. You've been like segueing perfectly across things that I've always wanted to ask you about. And, you know, I definitely remember all of your Art of Motion submissions. And, you know, you could speak at length a little bit longer on this, but I remember the 2014 one that you talked about, same year as Moving Blocks 1. I remember 2017 specifically because that's where you featured a lot of stuff like double cork both sides sides, double full both sides. The 2019 submission was super dope as well because it was cool. At the end of it, you announced you were opening your own gym, which is like the time that you announced motive. But I think one of the biggest things that has always blown my mind as someone who has like been an MC and a host of multiple Red Bull Art Emotions is you have technically, have you ever qualified via the actual video rounds? Because if I'm not, I believe from 2014 to 2019, you've submitted videos and you've actually only competed 2 times when you went to an on-site qualifier, if that's right.
Yeah, so I've only ever competed because I actually thankfully I had sponsors at the time who were able to pay for it, but they paid for me to go try out in the on-site qualifier, and I got in 1 year through that, and then the other year that I went, I actually didn't qualify, which was interesting because that year I actually had more fun when I didn't qualify because like 2 emotions hit me immediately when they didn't announce my name and I like didn't qualify to get in. I was like, oh, I'm sad I didn't get in. And then I was like, I'm in Greece and I don't have anything to do now. Yeah. I'm going to train so hard.
True story.
So it was like both sad and happy when I didn't qualify that year, honestly. That year I had way more fun because like all the stress immediately went away and I was like, dude, I can just train and make a sick video now. So yeah, both emotions happened that year. But yeah, I never made it in through the online qualifiers, and I've submitted pretty much every year since 2014. And you know, there's been all kinds of debate about whether I should or shouldn't have. But the fact of the matter is, the more I've thought about it more recently, especially over the last year, and I haven't talked as much openly about it in the last year, but I have thought a good bit about it, and it's just like, I got a little bit upset with like the last year that I tried and didn't qualify. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, man, this is like a new sport, a new thing. And like right now, the way parkour competitions work is it's just super biased. Like whatever the judges want to see is what's going to get into the competition. And I didn't keep that in mind when making my submission. When I made my submission every year, all I did was focus on, well, like what tricks do I think are going to be the most impressive outside? What video is going to make me the most proud? And I'm very happy and super happy about every single video that I made because it made me proud. I didn't make it for the judges. But the thing is that if I would have did some more research on the judges and what they actually wanted to see and potentially even reach out and message them and ask them questions on like which trick would get more points, this trick or this trick, and I would have catered it towards the judges, there's a higher chance that I would have gotten picked. And, you know, that's my fault for not doing that. But I'm more happy that I just did the tricks that I really wanted to do outside. And even if they got less points, they're the tricks that made me more happy. And I think in the long run, that was maybe a better move on my part. I think going into the future, if I ever did decide to resubmit again, I might do a little more research on like what the judges want, because I've just come to realize that it's just always like whether you try to avoid bias or not, right now with the current parkour judging system that they have for judging, like there's just bias in it. And I feel like it's maybe kind of the same for tricking. Like tricking, there's not like any sort of like list of criteria of points. It's just like the judges are just like, well, that was dope, and they just point at someone, you know? Yeah. So it's just like, it's a new sport. Like there's just gonna be bias in there, and you can't be upset about it. Like you just gotta have fun and like do what you enjoy doing. Yeah. That's how I feel about it for now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. It is kind of like you said, like we're in not only our sports very new and in its infancy, but like you said, like it's still like, you know, judging is still left open to personal opinion because we're not doing standardized stuff like in gymnastics where it's a compulsory score or standardized skill that you can judge, you know? So yeah, it is rough. I'm very curious to see what happens. And I've talked to other guests on the Jamcast. We're really curious to see how breakdancing gets taken care of in the Olympics as far as their judging system is concerned, because breakdancing battles are the same thing where generally speaking you just have 2 guys battling and at the end of it guys point to one side or the other. So I'm curious to see how that's going to do on a stage like the Olympics, you know?
Yeah, that'll be super interesting. Like that'll be like the first sport that I know of that's like also a little bit more leaning towards just like bias of like they don't have a specific set of skills, so like what are they gonna do? Like another interesting thing that it doesn't have as much to do with breakdancing. Maybe it does, maybe it applies, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it kind of does because sometimes breakdancers do tricking stuff as well. But there was that it's not as big of a deal anymore, but there's that thing where, like, is parkour different than free running? Like, people, when they think parkour and free running, typically they think parkour is like jumps and vaults and things like that, and then free running is more flips and stylish things. Who cares what you call it? I don't really care about that. I don't have a huge opinion on that. Call it whatever you want to call it. What is interesting to me is that in competitions, depending on who the judge is, a big jump can literally get more or less points than a flip in a competition, which in my opinion, and this is, I'm biased, it's just me, but also I look at it from a point of physics. Any like, let's say you have two platforms and they're like some random distance apart, it doesn't matter, but they're one locked in distance apart. Any jump across that gap, in my opinion, is a preparation for a flip across that gap. If you can jump across the gap, then you literally have to do that, or you should physically be able to do that before you can flip across it. Therefore, the flip should always get more points, in my opinion. Now, that's my opinion. People can disagree, but according to physics, typically it's like more dangerous and harder to flip across things. Now, and the reason that I'm kind of reasoning or saying all that and clarifying that is because there was a year in Art of Motion where that really started to kind of click and clarify in my mind that it really is all based on the judges, because there was Pedro Segaldo who went in the same heat as Alfred Scott.
Yep. I was there that year. I know. I saw. I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. So he did those fat jumps, and he passed on to the next round, and Alfred didn't. And Alfred did two types of gainers that no one else in the world was doing. He did dash gainer and cascader, and didn't move on to the next round because Pedro did some fat jumps. And I'm like, it's my opinion, but in my opinion, it's so much easier to jump across things than it is to get your head like this far away from something and flip. Like, I don't know, my opinion, but like that's the first competition where it started to click in my mind, where I was just like, man, like, he got picked because the judges thought that jump was cooler than a flip, even though in my mind it's not that way. And that's when I started to realize, like, man, it's really not about like what I think is cooler or more dangerous or what I think is like better. If this is a competition, it's about what the judges choose. So that's when I started to realize, like, man, I should really maybe just like do more research on what they think are going to get more points. And I think that's when I started really thinking hard about, like, man, do we need to like rewrite the system of judging parkour? Do we need to like rewrite this whole thing? Am I right? Are they right? Like, who's even right in this situation? Do we need to separate parkour out more? Do we need to write a list of like, this skill's worth this many points, this skill's worth more? And it's super complicated, because not only is it like, let's say a cast back and push off your hands and do a backflip. That can be worth one amount of points if you do it off something head height, but then it's worth way more points if you can do it off something that's your knee height, because that's so hard. So it gets really complicated, because you can't just like list a trick and list how many points it's worth. It gets way more complicated than that. So there's definitely like, I think down the road, as we start to solidify more tricks and people start to calm down on like how many rotations are possible and things like that, I think we can come up with some kind of system that's a little bit better than what we have. But I think we just like trial and error, and that's part of the really cool opportunity that I have at my gym. Every week we try to do competitions at the gym. Right now we just do speed comps every week. But as we get more people coming in the gym, I want to start doing style comps every week and just mess around with different formats each week and see what works and see what doesn't work, because I'd love to solidify something that more people agree upon.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. For a long time, as someone that's, had an opportunity to work for Red Bull and be at all of these art emotions around the world, I always had like, obviously I respect the judges and I'm friends with almost all of them, but I always did find some difficulty in the way that the judging system was I guess presented, and the way that you could skew someone's score, because they give 5 judges the opportunity to score someone between 1 and 100. And that's such a big disparity. Whereas like in martial arts competitions, we score people out of like a 10.0 system, but we say like, hey, if they're a black belt, we pretty much are only going to rank them from a 9.0 to a 10.0 because they're at a certain skill level, So then you're all like within range. I've seen some of the judging systems on the Art of Motion go where one guy gets a 90 and they give another guy a 20. And that guy's basically eliminated from the competition because one category he got a 20. He has no chance now. Yeah.
Yeah, in that specific competition, I had a bunch of things that I thought specifically should be changed. Like there were heats, and I thought that was kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. They told me several reasons why they did the heats. They said that the the first person would always get way less than the last person, so their solution was just put it in heats, and then that makes like each heat more fair. Like their scores would be more similar in each heat. But then I was like, that doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it harder to see because the first person in each heat still got way less points than the last person, which is what happened in Alfred's heat. Alfred went first. Pedro, I don't think he went last, but he might have went last. He went close to last. And Pedro got more points because Alfred went first. And whoever goes first always gets less points because they have to, whoever goes first, you have to put them around a 50. That way you can go up or down from their score. So like,
Totally.
it needs to be clarified a bunch more. Like the heat system I didn't like. I'm not a fan of live scoring. I understand that it's more entertaining if you immediately get like a live score, but if you don't see everyone's runs first and then put a score on each, because we don't have a system of like this point's worth this many, this point's worth this many, like each skill's worth this many points, you can't come up with a live score because if the first person does something ridiculously hard and you score them at a 50 because you don't know whether to put them high or not because no one else is going, then the last part, it's just going to be all messed up. So I'm really against live scoring currently. I think that's something eventually that could be done once we get a different system. But I think that live scoring right now is hindering the outcome. Now, whether it's hindering the actual like audience, I'm not actually sure about that as well either. They say like live scoring is more entertaining, more people will watch if there's live scoring, but I don't even know if that's true. Like I've never watched a competition where I'm like, man, if they didn't have live scoring, I'd turn this off right now. Like, I've never thought that. I'm always watching because I either know someone who's competing or because, like, I just want to, like, meme around on the live stream and make jokes and stuff. Like, no, I feel like no one personally watches that much for the live scores, but, you know, I could be wrong. Maybe a small percentage of people really care about that or something. But I think the whole system needs to be rethought. I think a panel of people who know a lot about just like parkour and what they're talking about in general just need to get together and maybe come up with something better than what we have.
Yeah, I'm super curious to see what happens as well. And I've been following your gym too, so I see the Instagram stories where you're showing the speed competitions with students and, you know, people at your gym and stuff like that. And I think there's a great future ahead for our sport as far as speed competitions going, because obviously we see the success and fascination with Ninja Warrior because it's just a quantitative result where everyone does the same course and it's just fastest man to the end, and that may be the thing that helps us.
Yeah, that's part of the reason that why I do speed comps every week is because typically in parkour there's three types of competition. There's speed, there's skill, and there's style. Speed is like you make a course, you run through it, fastest time wins. So easy to be in charge of because it's like there's no arguments. It's just like fastest time wins. So easy to be in charge of. Skill a little bit harder because you have to make up different categories. Like you have to make a big jump, and whoever you make like a series of jumps, and whoever can get the farthest jump essentially gets more points and wins. And then you do that for each category: swing, jump, vault, whatever categories you choose. It gets a little more complicated in terms of making the actual course, but in terms of like judging, that one's still easy too because it's like, man, whoever did the hardest challenges, whoever jumped the farthest, swing the farthest, whatever challenge, whoever got the most points through that one, that's still pretty easy. Style competition, we still don't have like a set amount of points for anything or how we figured that out yet. So style comps are at the point where it's just like really hard to deal with right now. But like skill and speed are both like competitions that are really easy to judge, and I could see going a lot farther. A lot sooner than style competitions because style competitions are just so biased. But also, style competitions are, in my opinion, and from what I've seen in terms of view wise of live streams and in person, style competitions are the ones that get the most views. So it's interesting that the one that has the most views is like the least formatted one of all of them. Like that's just kind of weird, but like. It's super entertaining. Like we need to figure it out and make it better. But I'm super excited for all the online things that are coming out right now. That really solves a big gap in a lot of problems that were in current competitions. Like let's take Red Bull for example. We were talking about it. For Red Bull, there was a pretty common thing going on for a while where if you placed, I think it was a top 5 or something, you automatically qualified for the next year. But like within that year time span, like you could get injured, you could just not train very hard, not be very good. Like, whereas in these online competitions where it's just like you submit an online video, like if you're injured, you just don't submit an online video. Whereas if you're already pre-qualified for something and then you're injured, we have to go through that whole process of like, oh wait, now we have an extra spot, we have to invite someone else in. Like, I do think that there's a really cool future of online competitions because anyone can compete from anywhere, and you don't have to worry about people like not showing up because they got injured last minute and stuff. Because it's like it's just all online. If you don't compete, you just don't submit a video and things like that. I think the online competitions are really cool. I'm enjoying watching everyone's time and trying to deal out with that. One more thing about online competitions. I recently submitted into a competition specifically because there were prizes for all top 10. And I was like,
that's a rarity.
Like, most online competitions right now, they give like 1 through 3rd place a prize, and like the 1st place prize is like the only prize that's like actual decent money.
Yeah.
And I saw a competition that was run by, I think it was just called like Ninja Parkour Japan or something like that. That was giving out like top like 10 prizes, all were like $500 plus.
Whoa.
And I was like, man, I can definitely get top 10 at least. Like, I'm going to submit to this. I don't care if I get first. Like, even if I get, like, 8th place, I'm going to get, like, $500 or something like that. So I submitted. I got 5th place, and I won $1,000. And I was like,
way.
There needs to be more competitions where not even if their prizes are that big necessarily, but I think online competitions need to focus more on the amount of the prizes because let's say like if Tempest started, instead of giving $500 to 1st place or whatever they're doing, if they started giving 10 people prizes of other things, maybe like bottom 5 through 10, they all get like a free Tempest shirt or something like that. I think more people would submit because more people are in the mindset of like, well, I might be top 10, I think the more prizes we end up giving out in terms of not just 1st through 3rd, that could potentially draw more people into doing it because it's what drew me in to submit into the competition that I ended up getting 5th place and winning stuff in. And if they did another one where they gave out top 10 prizes like that, I would totally do it again. So I think that's some good advice if anyone's listening who's in charge of those competitions.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I never really thought about that, and that's something to definitely take into consideration as I'm going to venture into some online tricking stuff. So I appreciate the insight on that, man. That's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now along the lines of like style stuff with parkour and free running, like obviously you're world renowned for having such a unique style from, doing stuff on both sides to just like, the vocabulary of tricks and skill set that you have. I think one of the coolest things I saw though was in 2019, you put out your first tricking sampler. And I just always wanted to ask you about like, what is the inspiration that you get behind the types of combinations that you put together and how are you able to formulate them? Do you like write them down ahead of time or do you just like go to the gym and see how your body flows and you're just reactionary based on the positioning of your body?
So it's kind of like this for a lot of my sessions. But specifically for that video, the tricking sampler I made, I specifically had in mind that I knew if I made a regular tricking sampler, it would be pretty weak. Like, the most quirks I can do is 6 in a row. I can do 6 in a row on both sides.
I know, which is crazy.
but I can't, I've never even done a dub, which is, like, pretty common nowadays for tricking. So, like, I knew I wasn't going to get very, very far, be very proud of my tricking video if I made a normal tricking video. So my whole idea behind that tricking video I made was, what are the weirdest, most unique combinations I can do so that people will start to get influenced to start moving more creatively. Okay. Because a lot of people, whether it's in tricking, parkour, like in every sport, it's a natural thing to see what everyone else is doing and to get inspired by that and try to do that. And I wanted to inspire people to try to almost think for their own and just get in the position where they start moving more creatively. So for that video, I had a lot of inspiration through a couple different people who moved really, really just uniquely. A lot of them were like circus people. Aaron Hakala.
Aaron Hakala is one of my favorites.
Been a super big fan of him for a long time. One of the few people I actually haven't met through parkour yet. I really do want to meet him. He seems like a super friendly guy. I know a bunch of people who have met him. They said specifically that I would like him a lot and that he's super friendly. So Aaron Hakala, he's like a circus dude. He does a lot of T-board stuff. Yeah. And then I'm forgetting. Louis West.
Oh my
Louis West.
God. People don't
Yeah,
know about Louis West, bro.
yeah, Louis
He
West, man.
flows
Go look up
so
Louis West.
beautifully.
He has his YouTube videos like Ragmuffin and
Yep.
like all that stuff he puts out, dude. He's just got literally like I think Ragmuffin and all those other videos he puts out are literally just like 4 to 5 minutes of just like the weirdest movement you'll ever see. Like, and a lot of it you'll see inspiration if you watch his videos and then watch my tricking video. You'll see a lot of similarities where I just picked out things that I thought were either funny or just really unique and just put them into my tricking lines. Like, and that specific video, I don't know where I got it from, whether it was a mixture of like a bunch of different parkour stuff I'd seen, or maybe I saw a little bit of the influence in Louis as well. But I got really into just doing like, I don't know what it'd be called tricking, but I just always call it like tiptoe tricks.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah.
you're like you don't really use any of your steps. You're not pushing off each step. You're literally just tapping your feet and then hucking a trick.
Yeah.
And I got super influenced by that because I was like, man, these are pointless steps that look so funny and stupid to me that like it just cracks me up so much I have to do something with it. So a lot of my like creative weird tricks from that video just came from literally just me thinking that they're funny, like just movements where I'm like, man, that's a funny movement. Can I make that cool?
Yes.
Like that's a really, really fun thought process to go through if you're trying to learn or make up or invent a new trick. Like do something with your body where you're like, this is a funny movement. Like this looks stupid. Can I make it cool?
Yes.
And as soon as you can, it becomes a really, really unique, cool trick. And I did that for a lot of the tricks in that video. And then a lot of the other inspiration just came from just kind of messing around and seeing how my body felt that day. I would start with one idea and be like, well, typically out of like a TDR, you would swing a cork or a gainer. Like, what's something else that I can do that you wouldn't think to do out of a TDR or out of whatever trick it is? And that's where my kind of thought process was when I did the round off double side flip traveling backwards. Was just like, man, what do you never see someone do? And I was like, the round off and then anything besides double back or double full. Yeah. So I eventually came to the point where I was like, man, well, round off double inward tunnel or double inward side or whatever you want to call it. And that was kind of like my concept for the whole video, just like what tricks can I do that will, when people watch it, confuse people or make them laugh or make them start to laugh and be like, well, that was actually kind of cool.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was kind of my thought process behind that whole video.
That's dope, man. And now, like, you've been someone who, like, besides myself, like, and all your followers, like, you've contributed so much to the sport, obviously from all the things we've talked about as well, to moves like you're the first person I saw do 720 front outside, super clean, off a drop. At this point in your career, like, are you still chasing specific moves, or are you at a level right now where you're just kind of more focused on maintenance and giving yourself to your students with how much you're coaching?
So I definitely, over the last, so what was it? I was like 21, 22 when I broke my knee the first time. And I broke it because of just how much I trained and didn't rest. And I got to the point where I was training so much that even my rehab and strengthening and stretching couldn't keep up with the amount I was training. And eventually one day on a landing, I was doing a bar dismount and I landed, and it looks like, I have the video, it looks like I landed completely fine. Like I literally hit my feet, tapped my hands, got up and walked away. I was like, man, that felt weird on my knee. I went to go grab water. And by the time I came back and I was about to try it again, by the time I got back from getting water, I was like, my knee feels real weird. I think I'm going to call it and give it a night. I went to bed, woke up, and I was like, I can't move my knee. So I went to the doctors, and I was like, 100% expecting them to say you partially tore your tendon. And I was like, well, that makes sense. Like my tendon's been giving me problems for years. And I went there and they're like, we're going to x-ray it. And I was like, will that show a tendon tear? And they're like, no, but we got to do this first. And I was like, fine, you're a doctor, you just want my money, whatever. They x-rayed it and they're like, nah, your knee's broken. And I was like, oh, what? And apparently upon that landing, I had put so much stress on my tendons and done so much rehab on my tendons that my tendons were actually so strong and tight that upon that landing, my tendons pulled my kneecap apart into two pieces.
Crazy.
So that's how my knee broke, which is crazy to think. That's just a crazy thought.
Yeah.
So then they told me don't do anything for 6 months and then get back into it super slowly. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna wait 6 months and then probably hop right back in. And that's what I did. Yeah. And then because I did that, my knee broke again. Like it just refractured in the same spot. So I was like, oh man, like I'm getting older. Like I'm actually gonna have to do this correctly. So then I waited another 6 months, and then I slowly got back into training. And that's when I started really heavily getting into trampoline, because instead of just immediately going back to doing flips on concrete, I literally started with trying to balance on one foot on the ground. Once I could do that, as soon as I could do that, I got on my trampoline, tried to balance on one foot on trampoline. Did that for a few days, got to the point where I could bounce on one foot on trampoline about this high off the trampoline. Wow. And I started progressing to the point where I started just trying to do like really basic tricks on trampoline and try to just strengthen my knee back to where I wanted it to be. And it took me about another 6 months, so a year and a half through the first moment where I broke my knee, to get back to a point where I was doing tricks on trampoline that were even harder than when I started. I finally actually worked my way up to strengthening it to further than where it had been. And through that process, I just got so comfortable with being on trampoline, because at trampoline at any point you can always just turn out to your back, and you don't have to take the pressure on your legs if you feel like you're not going to land it good. That I got real good on trampoline real quick. And that helped my air awareness so much. And it also helped with something I didn't expect it to help with, which was bar tricks. And there's a video on YouTube that I made called Bob is Back. And it was after I finally rehabbed my knee and got stronger. And you'll notice that I had a lot of really cool trampoline and bar skills, because I realized that trampoline and bars are way more similar than most people think. Like a lot of the body positions and things that you have to hit on trampoline are the exact same thing you have to do on bars. A lot of people have realized it because I've made videos on it before. Anyone who hasn't seen my videos maybe hasn't made this connection yet. But a Cody on trampoline is literally the same exact thing as a swing cast on a bar.
Yeah, body position wise. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I made a lot of those connections along the way. And my trampoline training that came from me injuring my knee actually ended up helping me a ton in terms of understanding body mechanics when it came to bars. So I instantly kind of like got better at both of those, which was really cool. And then my knee injury also forced me, for that long 6 months where I was progressing back into it, to do a lot more tricks where I was like bouncing on my back or my arms especially. And that's when I started to get really good at just doing like handstand backflips on trampoline. And I got really strong arms because I was like, I can't put a ton of pressure on my legs right now. Guess I'll jump on my arms. So yeah, I got all kinds of unique tricks on my hands as well at that point, and that made my arms stronger, which made me even more ready to do more bar stuff. And yeah, I mean, everything's kind of a blessing and a curse all in disguise at the same time when it comes to that stuff. Like when I injured my knee, I learned so many life lessons that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. Like first thing I learned is that I didn't have anything else going for me besides training in life. Because as soon as I got injured, I broke my knee. I had never before in that point really been injured to where I couldn't do anything. Like when I broke my knee, not only did it hurt to put pressure on that leg, like I couldn't do a handstand or anything, because to flex any muscle around my leg hurt real bad. So for like 6 months, I couldn't do literally any type of movement, which is all I knew. So in that like 6 months, I had a lot of life lessons learned where I had to learn to enjoy other things. And one of those things would be like cooking or like juggling or solving Rubik's Cubes, and just like learning to enjoy other things in life besides just making only parkour in my life. And that was a really cool lesson that I learned along the way after getting hurt. And that was like really a blessing in disguise, because it made me just get better at other things in life. And that prepared me for where I am now, where now I'm older. When I was, back when I was talking about being like 15, I trained like every day, like 4 to 6 hours a day. I can't do that anymore. My knees and body will just hurt if I do that. I train I train a day, I rest a day. I train the next day, then I rest the next day. I just have to, otherwise my body will just be in pain. So when I broke my knee and I learned things, like I learned that I actually really enjoyed cooking, and I learned how to cook a bunch of things. I do that on my rest days. I learned how to juggle, and learned how to juggle a bunch of different things, like juggling traditionally, as well as like doing double sticks and flower sticks. And most recently I started learning to like juggle cones on my rest days and like doing cone flips and tricks, and that's been super fun. And just finding ways to have fun where other people might think to not even try. Like, there's this thing on my desk right now. I'll pick it up and show you. This thing's called smack food. Have you ever seen this thing before? It's a really
No.
broken one. But essentially, like, you smack it and it flies up, and you play it with two people.
Oh yeah, it's like birdie. It's like badminton. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
You
that
like
kind of
kick it
stuff.
around.
Like, I
Yeah.
buy little toys
Yeah.
like this and play, and just like I find little hobbies like that like this will help my hand-eye coordination,
Totally.
but it'll give my legs rest for a day. And I'll just find random things that are fun to do like that, and those will be my rest days. So my rest days aren't necessarily like resting, like just sitting on a couch. My rest days are, well, what parts of my body like can I use to give the parts of my body that need a rest a rest. So that's been really cool to experiment with and just like find different things. One of the recent things I've been doing is my friend Roland Hannigan, me and him, we just like slide down stuff. Like, you don't need
Just
any
slide.
part of your body active, and like you don't take any impact if you're sliding on stuff. So we slide down handrails. I have a boogie board or a body board in my car, my trunk, like at all times, just in case I ever see something that just seems like I might be able to slide down on a boogie board, and I just slide down it. Like in my most recent video, my birthday gym video,
Yes.
it started snowing, and we slid down the staircase on a boogie board that I had in my car. And we just like find things like that on rest days or when we're tired, even like after the session. Like that was during the session, like we went out and slid on stuff. Like we just find other things to have fun with, and that we kind of just did over time, just to have more fun as well, just find more fun things in life to do, not just on rest days but just in general. And that's kind of been really cool to in the progress of social media as well, because a big part of my income for a while, I don't focus on it as much anymore, but it still is like a passive or goes into savings income from social media. It's helpful for that, because if all I ever do is just post parkour, I'll probably mostly only get like parkour followers. Whereas when I do things like slide down stuff and run and scream and jump off the building into the resin and stuff, like you do things that people find funny, you get more followers through that, and now you can sustainably, make a living off that as well. There was 2 years of my life where I lived off just social media, and I was focusing super heavily on just like putting out as much content as possible. And that was a super fun 2 years, because I got to make my own schedule of when I got to work, and I got to make my own schedule of like when I wanted to work, what I wanted to do that day, and it was super fun at the time. But one of the cool things about that is I could literally do whatever I wanted. If I thought that day I wanted to focus on, just training super hard and working towards making a really cool video, I could do that. If I wanted to just focus on like making tutorials and trying to get those posted out there, I could do that. Or if I wanted to just slide on stuff, I could just slide on stuff. And like it was a really cool time, and like I still enjoy doing a lot of those things that I found out I enjoy on the road of recovery of making my knee better. Oh, I forgot to say this. I meant to say this at the beginning, but when I first injured my knee, the first 3 days, I didn't know what to do. So I like had my brother grab my Nintendo 64, and I played Mario 64 for 3 days straight because I didn't know what else to do with my life. And literally, like from the second I woke up to the second I went to sleep, played just Mario 64 and got all 120 stars and beat the whole game in those 3 days. Like, I was watching like people speed run, and like I told you I get addicted to stuff.
Yeah,
And I got
exactly.
addicted to it, beat the whole game, and then after I beat the game, I was like, man, now what? Like I don't know what to do with my life. And that's when I started like realizing like I need to try other things. I tried like cooking and all that stuff that I'm interested in now. But man, it was really funny going down that process of just like, man, I don't know what to do. Guess I'll play Mario 64.
That is wild. And along the lines of like how you kind of laid it out there, where there was 2 years where you're putting out content, and how some of it you were just doing for fun, like sliding and yelling. And for your diehard fans, I feel like they would be pissed if I didn't ask about this. But can you just explain? Is that the reason behind the OppoBob account? Is that how that emerged? Was that just a way that you could have two separate platforms, or?
OppoBob's interesting, man. OppoBob's been so many different things. I actually haven't posted anything on OppoBob in a while.
It's been a while.
Ever since Reels, I started to use Reels because I realized on Reels, like, well, I'll just post like OppoBob stuff on Reels, and then instead of posting on OppoBob, that way all
Get
of my
traffic.
two separate accounts get combined into one, and hopefully I'll get more of a following because of that, and I won't have to half my followers because of two separate accounts. But OppoBob started as a joke because the guys from Boston, so Alfred Scott,
Yes.
Alex Lanatelli, all the guys in the Sandy Banana Gang,
Yes.
all those guys started. So we were in the basement of Andrew Friedman's house, the Grab Gang.
The grab pad. I was just training with Andrew this afternoon, Doug.
So we were in his basement, and we're all sleeping there that night. All of us guys from the Sandy Banana Gang, we all traveled out there together, and we're sleeping there. And I walk into the room after like grabbing some water, taking a shower or something, and they're all telling rumors about me that aren't true to each other, like as a joke. Like it was the funniest thing. Like I walked in, and they were just like, "Yo, I heard Bob Reese can deflate himself and slide under doors." Like it was the funniest stuff. Like they were just making it's like when you sleep over at your friend's house and you guys just stay up a little too long, like in the dark, just saying stupid stuff. It was like that. I walked in on that happening. And eventually it got to the point where like people started like joking about like OppoBob and me having two different personalities and stuff. Like as if there was actually two different Bobs, because at that point I knew how to twist both directions.
Yeah.
And they were like starting a rumor that like there were two different versions of me, and one of them twisted one direction, one of them twisted the other, and I was just really good at hiding it. And then we jokingly, I jokingly started the account. And my first few videos, if you go back and scroll to the first things on OppoBob, it's literally just me doing tricks on my opposite side. And I was originally only going to make the account for tricks that I do on my opposite side and just post them there as if like I was a separate person, essentially.
Okay.
And then eventually over time, I had all these videos on my phone of just like funny, stupid stuff that I did just to make my friends and my wife and everyone in town laugh. I would film them and I wouldn't post them anywhere because I was like, these aren't things people want to see on Instagram. They just want to see me training. And I had all those videos saved up. And eventually at some point, I think it was when I broke my knee, I just started posting all those funny videos on OppoBob. And then I'd save all my training clips for a Bob account. And it started to get to the point where OppoBob had like started to get more of a following, and I was like, man, I guess people do want to see me just doing stupid stuff and having fun. So then I like eventually once Reels came out and I started doing more TikTok as well, I kind of started to blend those two things back together and started not just posting training but posting all the other fun things that I do as well in my personal free time. So whenever I'm not training, screaming and running and sliding on stuff or whatever I end up doing. So yeah, it's been interesting how that's all went along. Like specifically when we posted training and then didn't think this would work well, but it did work well, and then they all kind of blended back together. And it's been super interesting. Like just seeing where social media has taken me in general. It's really cool because it's given me like a life and who I am. Like I lived off just income from social media for 2 years, and like that was super cool time. And now I'm not like as relying on the financials of that anymore as I used to be, and I'm trying to do other stuff and just kind of posting on social media, mostly just for fun. But all the income that I make off like TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that, I'm mostly just putting straight into savings so that I can, just invest in the future and like having a kid and things like that. But it's been super interesting how social media has been, how much it's impacted my life. Like I don't know where my life would be right now without social media.
Yeah, totally, man. And I think one of the things that's so funny to me, and it's like such a juxtaposition, is that like, we all follow you for your insane skill level, and to see the videos you release on your YouTube. And what's so funny is that like of all the videos you've released, from your art of motion submissions to, like moving blocks, the video that has the most views with 3.5 million hits is your parkour fails video from 2015 to 2017.
Dude,
it's
I have
so
opinions
crazy
about that.
I know it, and I do too, because I'm like, dude, this guy's so skilled. It's messed up that his most viewed video is just like a bunch of fails with him and his friends,
So, my first initial thought when I realized that video blew up, and it's my way most viewed video compared to all my other videos, my first thought was like, man, this sucks. Like, now I'm just known for like failing or whatever. But then, I realized like, the people who are watching that, they don't actually know me for that. They're just looking up fail compilations on YouTube or whatever. And I started to realize like, man, I don't blame them. Like, fail videos are great. I watch fail videos all the time. Like, no wonder it blew up. Like, I love watching fails. Like, I've even gotten inspiration from fails before. Like, I've literally purposely watched a fail compilation with the intent of trying to look at the fails and the body positions that they're in and what they're doing and try to turn that into a trick itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like really all movement can be turned into something cool. And that's something that kind of went along with my tricking videos. Like I would take funny or stupid movements, stuff that I thought was really uncool, and try to turn it into a cool trick. Same thing with fail videos. You can take fail videos and watch the movement in them and be like, man, that's funny. How can I make it cool? And that's like a thought process you can go through as well, which is some of what I did. But mainly I just like watching people fail, dude. It's funny. Like, I can see why it's my most viewed video.
Totally, man. And now this is the last question I'll ask you about injuries, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know it's late there, but between the parkour fails video 2015, 2017, 2018 you released a video where you show your broken teeth and your concussion. One of the things I've always wanted to ask you about, and it's up to you if you want to talk about it here, but when you put out your video in November of last year, Bob the Tomato, the last clip of the video, it doesn't seem like anything really happened at all. But like I read through the description and I remember seeing it, but you said that you got a concussion in there and you suffered amnesia. I was just curious, like if you could, just kind of let us know what happened. Cause I think for a lot of your viewers along with myself, like it looked like you landed the trick and rolled out fine, but obviously like, based on the description, it seems like it went a little bit different.
Yeah. So that was actually real confusing for a bunch of different ways. Confusing, obviously, because I forgot what happened because I had amnesia, but also because, like, I did seem fine for so long after it. So I don't know any of this for myself. This is, like, all stories of what people told me happened after, because I don't remember that whole day at all. That whole day, honestly, that whole weekend is just out of my mind. I don't know. My only memory from that weekend is what people said and the videos I have on my phone.
Okay.
So that was just a crazy experience in general. So that whole video I was making, the Bob the Tomato video, feel free to add a clip or whatever in here of that. But I was working on, for a whole year, I was working on a video where like every other weekend I would just do a massive front flip. I would just try to find spots where I could do them. And that video took me like a year to film, and I finally put it out in November because the last one I wanted to do, I was saving the biggest and farthest one for last, was that one at the courthouse here in Greenville. And I knew it was going to be big, and I knew it was like, it probably wasn't going to be the cleanest landing because I knew how much impact it was going to be, and that my body would probably I'd have to roll a little more over my side than usual because it was just going to happen so fast. So I saved that one for last, and that's why I was able to put the video out even after having the concussion, because I had all the other clips already ready, and it was the last clip, like the very last one that I was getting ready for. But yeah, so what happened that day was I set out to do that front flip. Went out and did it, and based off of what I've talked to people about, here's what happened. I prepped the front flip a few times from the actual stairs first to make sure I was like ready for the height impact. Okay. But I couldn't actually prep the distance and the height without just going for it. Like I prepped the height, but I didn't prep the distance. I just knew I could get the distance based off of other front flips I've done before in the past. And then I went back, I went for it, I did that huge, massive front flip. And if you watch the side angle, from the top angle, it's kind of hard to see. But if you watch the side angle, which is like a phone filmed one, I know I have it on Instagram, it might also be on the YouTube video. If you zoom in and watch it in slow motion, you watch my head on the landing, you can see I put my hands down for the landing and I try to roll, and the side of my head does hit the ground, and it doesn't look that bad, except for when you realize, like, you're watching in slow motion, like, my head hit the ground fast. Like, it was a lot of impact. Like, I don't know exactly how high up that jump was, but I have to say it's probably, like, maybe 15 feet off the ground, and the distance I was flipping had to be close to, like, 20 feet. It was huge, yeah. So when I hit the ground, it was a lot of impact. And the roll was fine. My shoulder didn't hurt at all, like, nothing like that. But my head just bumped the ground, and concussion is when your brain's like hitting the side of your skull. So my head actually didn't hurt that bad. It's just my brain hit the side of my skull so hard that I had a really bad concussion. And the effects of the concussion didn't set in for like 3 hours. This is where it gets crazy. I do the roll, I land, I jog up, I look at the camera, and I'm like, wow, that was crazy. Like, I don't remember exactly what I said. You can watch it in the video, but I'm just like, wow, I'm really glad I did it or something like that. And they're like, are you okay? And in the video, I say, like, yeah, I bumped my head a little, but, like, I'm fine. And apparently that was, like, all I said about that. I didn't complain much about it, but I was, like, pretty much fine at that point. But then we like turned the cameras off, and apparently, I don't remember any of this, but apparently we went around to other spots and kept training for 2 more hours after that. We filmed other things, did a bunch of other stuff. Apparently, everyone said that I was more chill and I didn't really do much besides kind of just like hang out and do like, basics and stuff. I didn't do any like other hard tricks or anything, but I kind of hung out, walked around with everyone, and trained for 2 more hours after that. And then everyone finished training because it got dark. And apparently, I don't remember any of this, but apparently I got back in my car with two of my students. They're older, they're like 15 to 16, but I got in the car with two of them and drove them home, which I don't even remember.
Don't remember it.
Yeah. And then drove myself home after dropping them off, and then walked inside. And at that point, apparently when I walked inside is when the amnesia set all the way in. Because as soon as I opened the door and got inside, my wife was on the couch. And I don't remember this. This is like what she was telling me. I walked inside and I said, "Where am I? Who are you?" to my wife. I said, "Who are you?" to my wife. And she, at first, she said she thought it was a joke.
Yeah,
I make stupid jokes like that all the time. Like, I probably shouldn't, but I do. So, I walk inside and I'm like, "Where am I? Who are you? How did I get here?" And she's like, "Stop joking." And after a few minutes, she realized, like, I wasn't joking. Like, I actually had forgotten, like, everything.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Okay, I'm going to call the people you were just with and figure it out." She called the people I was just with, and they were like, "Yeah, he did a huge front flip. He bumped his head, but he kept saying he was fine. Like, on the ride home, he started to repeat himself a little bit, but he was driving normal, so, like, we just thought he was fine." And, yeah, she was like, "Okay, well, then he definitely has a concussion when you go to the hospital." So I went to the hospital, and, man, my memory is so fuzzy. I remember being at the top of the front flip. The whole part of the day, the only part I remember is being at the top of the front flip and, like, looking down and being like, "Okay, I'm about to do this." And then the next point that I remember in terms of my memory is I remember being in the hospital, and it was like really fuzzy. And I remember like people trying to talk to me, and the doctors like making fun of me, saying I shouldn't like be doing big flips or something, some kind of stupid doctor joke or whatever. And then the next memory I have after that is like being at home, like waking up, and like this is where it gets funny. The next memory I had after that was I remembered waking up and my head hurting and I have to use the bathroom. So I get up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I get up, I use the bathroom, I flush, I go to like stand up and pull my pants up, and then I'm like, did I go to the bathroom yet? So I sit back down and I try to use the bathroom again, and then I think I get done with it, so I stand back up, and while standing up, I forget whether I used the bathroom, so I sit back down. I have no clue how long that went on for, but it went on long enough to where my wife woke up and was like, "Is everything okay? Like, you have amnesia, let me come check on you." And she came and checked on me, and she was like, "Well, clearly you like didn't flush yet. You went to the bathroom, flush, let's go to bed." Like, so that was crazy. But yeah, my wife took me to the hospital. Turns out I had a concussion. I had really bad amnesia. My head hurt and I was really fuzzy and I was in and out of stuff, sleeping like pretty much through most of the days for like a solid like few days to almost a full week. And they said I couldn't do any type of movement or get back to coaching for 2 weeks. And yeah, man, it was a crazy experience from all the funny stories that people told me, that these things I don't remember, to slowly getting my way back to training again. It was a crazy experience. Like, like I said before, I've never done any type of drug, never done any alcohol, like nothing like that. So I've never taken anything. I've heard stories of people like blacking out from getting drunk and things like that. I've never personally experienced any type of like blackout where I lose memory. So me at my first point, getting to where like I wake up and I'm like, man, where am I? Like, what date is it? I don't know anything that's going on. That was like really scary for me at first. Like, I'd never gone through anything like that. Like, apparently when I was in the hospital, when we first got there, I'm laying in the bed, I'm waking up, just repeating myself every 2 minutes, asking the same questions. And apparently my wife told me, some nurse comes in and she's like, "Hey, let's like see how like cognitive he is. What's today's date?" And I go, "I don't know, February." And this was in November, bro. This is like around Thanksgiving.
This is literally
Like, "You think it's February?" And I was like, "Yeah." yeah, we're wearing jackets. It's cold. It's gotta be like February or something. So I had no clue like what day it was or anything. Like I literally lost like everything for that day. Like I didn't know anything. And I remember there was a point where like the next day or maybe it was 2 days later or something, my wife had went to a Friendsgiving, and the Thanksgiving leftovers she had like put in the fridge for me. And I remember waking up that day and like my brain was still fuzzy at that point. It was like 2 days after my concussion, and I'm still like kind of looping a little bit. Don't really know what's going on. I remember going to the kitchen and looking at that plate of food and going like I remember saying the thought like it's February, but then them telling me it's like November. And I thought that I had forgot and like missed Thanksgiving, and I got sad. Like I called my wife and I was like, "Did I miss Thanksgiving?" And like she was like, "No, like it's not Thanksgiving yet. That's just some leftovers. You can eat it. Like it's from a Friendsgiving. Like you're fine." And like that, oh, man, my wife's amazing. Like she had to put up with so much for that. Like I asked her the same question like 100 times. Like, what am I doing here? Why does my head hurt? Like so many things. Like I just repeated myself over and over. And there was a lot of funny situations because like at that point, like I was really just like a giant toddler. Like I didn't know what was going on, or like, man, it's like the most. I don't want to say vulnerable, but I don't want to say stupid either. But the most stupid I've been in like a long time. Like literally when it was at its worst point, it was literally like every 30 seconds. Like my memory just started over. Like from my perspective, it felt like I had just woken up every 30 seconds. So like I would literally like, it feels like I wake up, I look around, I'd see my wife, I notice my head hurts, and I go, why does my head hurt? Where are we? And then she would be like, okay. So your head hurts because you did this. Look on your phone, you'll see the video of you doing a front flip, you'll see why your head hurts. And I would look back at it, ask her a few more questions, 30 seconds would pass by, and then to me it felt like I just woke up, and then I would ask her the same thing again. But instead, I never fell asleep. I kept telling her that like I thought I had just woken up, but it was just every 30 seconds I would just gaze off and then look back at her and then just ask the same questions. But to me, it felt like I was just waking up every time. So like, man, through that one day, it probably felt like 500 days because I just woke up so many times, or felt like I woke up so many times that it was just me relapsing from amnesia. And man, it was such a crazy experience. And it was pretty crazy that it only took me 2 weeks to get better. 2 weeks, and then I started coaching again. And after 2 weeks, you know, me, I'm addicted to parkour. I immediately started trying to like test out the waters. I tried doing like a cartwheel, tried doing a handstand, a front flip, saw what hurt and what didn't hurt. And after 2 weeks, I started trying to do like cartwheels, flips, and things again. And it didn't hurt, but it made me a little dizzy. So I flipped and did stuff for like 5 minutes, and I was like, all right, I'm going to chill. I don't want to like relapse and have some more amnesia. And I did that every day where I just like the first day I did like 5 minutes of like cartwheels and handstands and stuff. And then I got dizzy and I was like, okay, I need to chill. The next day I did another 5 minutes, but the 5 minutes didn't make me dizzy that day. So then the next day I would do like 10 minutes. And then I got to the point where it was only like 3.5 weeks before I was like fully back to training like several hours a day again. So I got back into it pretty quick, but man, that was one of the most interesting fails and most interesting injuries that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, that is crazy, man. It's kind of funny too. Like, I mean, it's not funny, it's sad, but I had a Sean Batista on here like a couple weeks ago on an episode, and he had a similar instance where he went for like a Kong gainer variation and he hit his head. And
yeah, I remember seeing that video. That was crazy.
And what's crazy about him though is he got like taken home and everything was fine, and then he literally he all of a sudden went to go take out the trash, and that's when it hit him like, what am I doing home? Like, what happened? And he totally forgot the entire day too until he looked and watched the videos and had his homies tell him what happened. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy that amnesia can set in that late. Like I literally trained for 2 more hours after my injury, thought I was fine, drove 2 kids home, started questioning things and starting to realize like my head started to hurt more. And then it wasn't until I got home, parked my car, and as soon as I opened the door to walk inside, like that's when it set in for me, and that's when I started like really having it. And that's something I didn't know about amnesia. Like I always assumed like you hit your head, you immediately have amnesia. Like it didn't set in for like 2 or 3 hours for me, and I guess it didn't for Sean either.
The brain is such a crazy thing in general because, like, for example, I've had multiple concussions from doing stunts in the film industry, and I've had one concussion where my eyes were open and I couldn't see for 8 hours straight. Thought I was blind. I had another one where I went numb, like head to toe, for 30 minutes and thought I was paralyzed. But both of those instances, I had zero amnesia, which is so crazy because obviously the impact was so rough that I wasn't firing enough to see, visual signals. But it's just crazy to think about, like how it affects
Yeah,
people differently.
another interesting thing that someone told me after I was just talking to people about that injury was I teach a class that we call our Fountain of Youth class. It's on
I seen
Mondays,
that on the
and it's
website.
just yeah. So it's our class for like older people in like their 50s and stuff. And there's this guy that come. His name is Bill, and he's been coming since the class started, and I love him so much. And we started talking about my injury, and something he pointed out that I never really thought about that hard. I'm not like a nurse or anyone who studied that much about the brain, but he told me a concussion isn't when you hit your head really hard, like this is your skull, it's your brain.
Yeah.
It's not when you hit your head really hard. It's when your brain gets slammed up against your skull. So it's not the impact that actually hurt it. It's after the impact when my brain moves and hits the skull, actually. And that's something I never thought about, but that makes for part of the reason why that the injury can be so weird. It's not like, oh, you hit it right here and this happens, you hit it right here and this happens. It's like, depending on how you're hitting it and the force that it's hitting at, your brain's going to bounce around in their different ways. And depending what part of your brain gets hit, like different things are going to happen to you.
Hell yeah. It's so crazy, man. Just glad that you're safe and on the road to recovery and stuff like that. It's just something I always wanted to ask since I never really heard the backstory. Just got to see the video, man. So, with that being said, man, like, more than anything, I really appreciate you taking time out of your night, especially post midnight. It's almost 2 a.m. over near your side. And so I don't want to keep eating up too much time. But, for those that don't know, this is actually like the first time we've sat and had an actual conversation. And I've learned so much about you that I'm really curious what your answer is going to be to this question. And it's something that I always end with. And I'm just curious to think and see, where do you personally see yourself 5 years from now? And where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
5 years from now, I want to see myself in a place where my gym is more stable in terms of not just like financially stable, but I want to have raised a group of parkour kids and made my own community where we are actually competing like against other gyms. I would love to build up not only my gym but the gyms around this area on the East Coast where we have a relationship with each other where we can actually make teams. So I'd love to make, not in the traditional sense of what you see a parkour team as now. A lot of parkour teams now just like sell clothing and they're just like a group of friends. But I want like an actual parkour team more similar to what gymnastics has, not quite that, but similar to that, where it's a group of people that are paying to be on the team of Motive School Movement, like that's their team, and that money that they're paying to be on the team goes to helping us buy rental cars and things to go and travel out and compete against other gyms, and hopefully those gyms will have teams and do the same thing and come travel to us, and that way the competition aspect of parkour can get spread more and people that are younger can start traveling more and competing more and making this more into a more realistic sport. And that's kind of like my main goal in terms of like where I really want the youth of my gym to go to. I'd also love my other classes to pick up, such as the Fountain of Youth class, and getting more people not involved in doing the higher impact stuff of parkour, but more older people getting involved in doing the part of parkour that helps you learn how to fall safer, because that'll keep you living longer, as well as the more you're moving in general, the healthier you're going to be. Like people who stop moving lose the ability to move. And people who keep moving, they maintain the ability to move for longer and they can live longer because of that. So I really like to push that aspect of parkour more and get out of people's minds that parkour is just this thing that extreme athletes want to do. Like it's a thing that we do in order to stay healthy as well. Like there's the aspect of me who does like new tricks and big flips and does things that are super dangerous, but that's not really what parkour is all about. It's about, one, the community, and two, like the actual movement itself. Like the movement kind of gets placed on each person. It doesn't get placed on, well, what you think the sport is. Most people hear parkour and they're like, jumping across hoops, that's what that is. It's not. Like it's different for each person. Like my 50-year-old guy who comes to Fountain of Youth class, like for me and him, like it's just about having fun and moving instead of just like lifting weights every day. Like if he can have fun moving, he's going to do it for longer. And if he does that for longer, he's going to have the ability to move longer, which is going to help him live longer. And like that's the goal. And we want to keep him as safe as possible while he's doing those things. So I really would like to see that progresses more as well. Besides my gym progressing, that's like an obvious goal of mine is my gym getting better and getting more classes going and things like that. I'm married now. I'd love to start working towards getting financially and mentally ready to have kids. But that's more of like a 10-year goal. So in terms of where I see myself in 10 years, that's more like having kids. And, I already have 2 dogs and a cat. You can hear my puppy probably through like half this audio. Sorry about that. We just got it. And he's like still in that phase. But yeah, so having a kid, I got a house this year, so that's it. That I'm starting to pay off a house. Just I guess becoming more responsible financially and more responsible, just like for my life as a whole, so that I can pass that on to other people. Like I started trying to do weekly sessions where I take my kids from the gym actually outside. It's not like a charge thing or anything. Like I literally just like text all their parents like in a group chat, and I'm just like, hey, I'm going to be training here today. If your kid wants to come join me and just have fun with everyone in the community, like come train with us. I want to introduce those kids to like what parkour is really all about to me, which is the community. Like when I first started parkour, I had just moved here from Hawaii, and where I used to live because my dad was stationed there for the Air Force. And when I moved here, I didn't have any friends or anything. Like I went to a new school. It was like a new area for me. And when I found out what parkour was and met Brett introduced me to the rest of the parkour community, and I instantly had like a really tight friend group who just enjoyed doing fun things, flipping, jumping off stuff, sliding down stuff, doing whatever. And I instantly had like a really tight friend group. And that's like a really big part that I want to get the students that currently just come to the gym because they're just trying to learn cool stuff. I'd really like to get them out to experience that community more. So that's like a huge goal of mine, is just like get as many kids out of the gym and just meeting the community as possible. But also, working towards being financially stable, like having a house, having everything to where I'm locked in, to where I can provide for other people. People coming in from out of town, being able to like house them and do all the things that people did for me when I was first, struggling to make a living with parkour. When I first started traveling around to do parkour, I didn't have money. Like I didn't go and pay for hotels and like pay for fancy food and do all that. Like I struggled to get by. I lived in my car. People would give me free housing because I like met them on Instagram and was like, hey, will you house me? And they were nice enough to let that happen. Like I want to be able to be in that situation for other people, where if other people want to come in from out of town and they don't have the financial stability to be able to just pay for hotels and have places to stay, or where I can have that, I can host people and just be able to further the parkour community, as well as just teach people about what the true community is all about and just having fun with it in general.
Hell yeah, man. I think those are some very ambitious goals, but ones that are totally achievable, and just based on all the success you've met through your personal, journeys through movement, and also, with the newfound success with the gym. I think anything you put your mind to, you'll be able to do it, man. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the next 5 to 10 years brings for Bob Reese.
I'm excited to see too. Sometimes no one really knows where they're going, man. You start aiming towards something, and then it puts you one way or the other, and then you just keep going with it. And I don't know exactly where I'll be, but I'm going to keep working towards whatever I think needs to be worked towards.
Hell yeah, man. And I think that's the coolest thing about these is that, you put it out there in the universe, and, hopefully we'll catch up sometime sooner or later than 5 or 10 years from now, and we'll see if you've far exceeded those goals and where you're at that point in your life. So before we get out of here, can you just let people know where they can continue to follow your own personal journey as well as the gym and stay up to date with everything you got going on in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So my stuff on YouTube is just Bob Reese. You look that up, it'll come up. Bob Reese Parkour, whatever you want to look up, that'll probably come up. Instagram, right now my @ is Bob Reese Cookie Monster. That's where I post most of my training stuff. And on Reels, I post more about that funny stuff I was talking about. TikTok is Bob.Reese. And that one, I actually have more followers than anywhere else now. I'm out almost 500,000 now on TikTok, which is super sick. Yeah, and then for the gym is motive_movement on Instagram. And then we have a TikTok as well, but we post pretty much the same thing on TikTok as Instagram. So you follow either one of those, you're going to get the same thing. And I think on TikTok, it's just motive movement without the underscore in between it. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
Perfect. And we'll be sure to put all those links on the screen and in the description so people can hopefully head over and check out the gym sometime.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yo, guys, with that being said, please be sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe for brand new episodes each and every week. Join us every Monday for Jam Breakdowns and every Friday for a brand new Jamcast, interviewing influential members of the movement community like Mr. Bob Reese himself. So that being said, guys, I got to give one more very special thank you. Thanks for coming through, Bob. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I really had fun. It's been good talking to you.
Hell yeah. And as always, guys, coming through, I'm your host, Travis Wong. Thanks for joining us here on another Jamcast. Until next time, we'll see you all soon. Peace.